has now grown in Australia alone to a $60 billion per annum road butchering, killing scam racket.
And the population just doesn't want to go there, any more than I do. I don't really want to go there. It's horrible. I just want to, laugh and have fun, and it's holiday season. But the thing is, right? I know because of my experience of this system that not only is it this billion-dollar racket and all that kind of thing, it's this torturous regime that inflicts, around about 7,000 people in Victoria every year who say, no, I don't want this, torture, and yet the government still does it. The psychiatrists are allowed to use people as human experiments against their will.
And the tragic thing is, these psychiatrists themselves, at the top of their $60 billion per annum road butchering, killing racket, and they are all frauds, they are all liars. The tragic thing is, they do this because they have very stealthily and clandestinely and most evilly designed and corrupted all the Australian state mental health acts, which now allow them to do this this grievous mass killing. Psychiatrists now in Australia, kill more people than cancer, heart disease, road deaths, ice addiction, heroin addiction, and
isn't it wonderful that psychiatrists do that? Oh, we should be saying, oh, thank you, white coats. Yeah, that's wonderful torture. Let's give you more money. Because we like being tortured, and we like the population being turned into invalids.
Yes, and it's tragic because, we might want to open up to the public who are unaware, and I must say, until we met 5 years ago, I was completely and totally unaware of what was going on, and I found through your case, and particularly Garth Daniels' case, now in Queensland, escaping the Victorian psychiatric system and trapped in the Queensland one, I've discovered that the Victoria alone issues 7,500 forced psychiatric orders every year to continue criminally injecting people with psychotropic drugs, which is a violation of the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Now,
it should be just a violation of ethics. You should not be allowed to force a person into an experimental concoction on that person, because psychiatrists only come up with a hypothesis that these things might work. And if you look at the 208-year history of psychiatry, you've got many different kinds of experiments that psychiatry has done. Many different ones, including insulin shock, including LSD, including the notorious lobotomy, Freeman or whatever his name was, that won the Nobel Prize for brain damaging people. And all these things, all of them, were considered wonderful cures at the time. They cured nothing. It was just propaganda that was put forth by scientists, but it's not science, and that's where science and medicine really falls flat. Yes, they think if they don't do that, they won't have available human specimens that they can use, but that is a horrendous thing for a society to be okay with, particularly when we're looking at now at least 50% of the population has been affected by psychiatry, as in they may not still be under the regime. A quarter of the population is under the psychiatric regime, but at least 50% has been in some way mauled by psychiatry. And when you think about the way, how hard it is for people to be able to, remove themselves from psychiatrists. Psychiatrists just latch in. If they can use you for a 20-year, 40-year, 50-year experiment, they will. But generally, the trials or whatever their research is generally 3-year. But I assume there's some companies that will also renew that trial and do an attachment trial onto it if it helps them sell their treatment for whatever needs, or their chemical for whatever. They just want to sign off to say that this chemical hasn't killed the person, or it only killed a certain percentage of people. So even though when they kill people, they're still not charged with murder.
Well, they're killing more Australians than cancer, heart disease, road deaths, ice, heroin and cocaine every year. They issue all those forced orders, as I said. Now, how do we convey and get across to the public that this is actually happening? Because I was completely unaware 5 years ago until we met. I'd been working through your case files, through thousands of case files, been to VCAT hearings, Supreme Court hearings, county court hearings, trying to stop these people, and they have corrupted and manipulated state mental health laws so that any psychiatrist anywhere can declare you have schizophrenia, ADHD, bipolar, depression.
Do you have to say all their horrible labels, or again, every time somebody says one of those labels, it hurts. It's psychiatrism it's like the most horrible slur, slanderous thing that I can think that was ever put on my person. And to hear it again, it's really painful, because I know that those labels, they were used to torture you. They were an excuse to torture you. And at some points, unless you played the game with the psychiatrist, you had to agree to those labels. So it was it's just horrible, and it's horrible to see people in the system who are having to agree to that, or have been agreeing to it for over 40 years and it's still not out of the system. They're still being harmed.
Well, they're forced by psychiatrists to agree. And if they say the drug that they've been pushed onto is hurting them, killing them, making them sick, these psychiatrists blatantly lie on file that they are treatment resistant, they are completely unaware,
Can't give informed consent.
Can't give informed consent, and they do not possess the insight to know what's good for them.
And if you start reciting the law to them, the CRPD or even in Victoria, Australia, the Charter of Human Rights, if you start reciting that to them, they'll call you litigative, they'll call you aggressive, which reciting law is not aggressive, it's advocacy.
And every case that I've dealt with is identical. The psychiatrists come in, they find a person that's undergone some sort of emotional distress, and emotional distress they have certainly been under, and they are suffering. They do not have a mental disorder or a disease.
They're not very human.
So psychiatrists invent and concoct those lying, fraudulent labels that I just mentioned and won't mention again because of the pain. But how do we get that across to people who are unaware, who's not working amongst the dead, the dying and the injured, that are stealthily preyed upon by parasite psychiatrists? Here's an example, because we've got to convey not just a context or a concept, we've got to convey a real life situation that shows to the unaware person exactly how this is happening and why it's happening. The fundamental driver is a $60 billion parasite racket by psychiatrists.
By you mean the unaware public?
Yes,
yeah?
Yes. So what I want to do is open up to the public a classic example of why all this is true. Because unless they're working on files with people and are advocates for people, as we are both in the county court, VCAT, Supreme Court, mental health tribunals, unless the watching public get invited in to understand what's happening, like me 5 years ago, they're completely unaware of the killing that's taking place. An example, and this is a classic example, it's not until very recently that psychiatrists classified gay, lesbian people as having a mental disorder. Now, this is just very, very recently. And you might remember the old 70s film, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is a graphic example of how drugs were pushed into people and ECT was pushed onto people when a corrupt, rogue, fraudulent scam psychiatrist merely declared that they had schizophrenia, or as
Can we stick to things that are actually happening now and are not fiction? Because I think it's important that the public does not get sidetracked into fictional stuff at all. Because it's not fiction, because every time that book or that film gets heard, and besides it was actually in our forensic facility as well.
I would like to make the point that I was making for the public.
Okay.
It's not about the movie, it's not about the film.
Yeah.
It is about the fact that these rogue butchering killers actually diagnosed a person as having a mental disorder because they were gay and lesbian. Now this is very recently. So they pulled out their prescription book and they forced these people to undergo regimes of highly toxic psychotropic drugs, and they declared that they had a mental disorder for life called homosexuality, and they would have to take these drugs for life. This was happening until very recently, and it is identical to what these scam, bogus, fraudulent psychiatrists are doing right now with all these other concocted, lying mental disorders that I just mentioned before.
And it's very easy for the communities that have been able to somewhat get away from psychiatry to just say, oh, well, the rest of them, they're not us, so it doesn't matter. But of course it matters. You can't have a person condemned because of hearing voices and visions. You want to condemn that, you don't realise that has racist beginnings for the reasons of that, and it hasn't changed, and it should and it must be no longer condemned by psychiatry, which psychiatry tries to act as an arm of the law. But you should not be using an arm of the law on innocent citizens. And you cannot and should not, but psychiatrists are condemning people for having thoughts, ideas, opinions. They should not be allowed to condemn people for that. They should not be allowed to condemn a person for their mood. We're all different, and if we're all like psychiatrists, I think it'd be a pretty horrible world. So what? This is just atrocious.
It is appalling.